Hello everyone, my name is Alyan Fiverrwala and today I am live with very special guest Mr. Bryan. Mr. Bryan, our digital marketing trailblazer founded the first conversation optimization agency in 1998. Author of 9 influential books including New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller. He is a leading expert in enhancing online business performance. So welcome Mr. Brian. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much sir for coming in my show. Oh, thank you so much sir for your time and coming in my show. Thank you so much sir. Okay sir, so before moving on a question, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Bryan Eisenberg. I'm here from Austin, Texas, originally from Brooklyn, New York. I've been in digital marketing since the early to mid 90s, so more than half my life. I started, I would guess, the first online experience when I was 12, 13 years old, and I built out a bulletin board system back on a 300 baud modem. And back then, I was also tweaking things to try to see how I can get people to do what I wanted them to do.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much for this your wonderful introduction. Okay, sir. So my first question in your screen: what inspired you to start the first optimization agency in 1998?
So, this is from the very early days of the internet, right? We had started out in like 95, 96. We were doing a lot of, the very beginning of search engine optimization, SEO type work. And, we were helping not only ourselves, but a couple of friends and then a couple of clients just bring in more traffic. And that was obviously a process that took a certain amount of time, but for me it was always about the bottom line, like how can I increase sales, right? So the traffic I knew was only one part of the equation. And I was originally before I got into being an entrepreneur and eventually going into this digital marketing, I was a social worker. And so I took my expertise from there, which was really understanding human psychology and why people do the things they do, and I applied it to the websites that we were working on, right? And so we changed flow, we changed position of things, we changed, what things stood out. We changed the copy, and those things started increasing sales, and we realized there's a lot more to this, a lot more to the testing that we can work on, and that led us to start getting a reputation for doing that for a few people. And we were at the time, this is as the internet was exploding, in the early days. There was a gentleman who owned a internet incubator, so he invested in a ton of companies, and he came to us one day, and it's also how I got my nickname, the Grok. And he said, you really should focus in on what you guys do special. So there's going to be a lot of people who drive traffic to a website, right? Who do SEO, but there's never going to be that many people who understand what you do. And he was right, just a little bit too early, because not as many people cared about online sales back then as they should have.
That's great, wonderful, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful answer. So, how have the principles of conversation optimization evolved since you began your journey?
There are probably a few ways. I mean, I think that obviously the technology has changed, right? It's become a lot easier to do testing. Back when we first started doing it, we were writing our own scripts and doing all that. It was just a difficult thing to do, right? You just didn't have the kind of little JavaScripts that you do now that, in a few minutes you can start testing things. But the principles fundamentally don't change. And it's why people still come back to some of my early books and say, what you said back then still is true today. And we did that on purpose, because human behavior is human behavior. It hasn't really evolved. About the only thing that I would say might have changed a little bit is the fact that it's getting harder and harder every day to keep people's attention, right? That's hard. But other than that, most of the principles are identical, right? How you make things stand out. How do you understand flow? How do you help, close the gap between, people's objections before they buy? None of that is brand new. They've been doing that since, the very first days in the marketplace.
That's great, awesome. So, sir, out of the 9 books you have written, which one holds the most personal significance for you and why?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, they all have different meanings in my life, right? They all came at different points in my life. From our first book, which was The Persuasive Online Copywriting back in 2001, to Waiting for Your Cat to Bark, which was our largest bestseller ever. Like, that one hit #1 on like every list for a long time. It's also, continues to be a top selling book. To Call to Action, which Seth Godin wrote a blog post about that helped us become a bestseller, which he said, don't judge a book by its cover. And he called the cover God awful. And then told everybody, ignore the cover, but what's inside of it, you have to go and read everything and drop everything and buy it. But probably the one that today holds the most significance is probably one of my latest books, which is The Rice and Beans Millionaire, A Tale of an Improbable Entrepreneur. Because this book is the book I wanted to write, not for me or my customers, but really for my kids, right? This is the lessons that I've learned as being an entrepreneur for the last 25 plus years, and working with such great entrepreneurs as well. And so I wanted my kids to be able to have those lessons in one easy place, so they don't have to repeat the mistakes I made.
Wonderful. So, can you share a key insight or strategies that business often overlook when trying to increase their conversation rates?
The most obvious one is very simple. It's what Chip and Dan Heath, the authors of Made to Stick, call a curse of knowledge, right? Well, no matter what you're selling, right? Whether it's a service on Fiverr, or whether it's lasers to operate on people's brain cancer and everything in between, there are things that you as the seller know about the business and about the products that your audience doesn't. And you spend every minute practically of every day thinking about it. And your customers spend about that much time when you're spending that much time. And so your biggest job is to capture their attention where they are in their buying journey with stuff that you've taken for granted for the most part. Like you should know this, and you think everybody knows it, but for the most part, most people actually don't know it, and you don't spend the time explaining it.
All right, sir. So, how do you feel when you see one of your book becoming a New York Times or Wall Street Journal bestseller?
Well, I mentioned earlier the thing with Seth Godin, and that was the first book that ever became a bestseller for us. And we were kind of surprised that the next morning we were getting calls from over a dozen publishers who wanted to publish our next book, because we were one of the first ones to ever self-publish a book and become a Wall Street Journal bestseller, because of the audience that we had built. And they realized that when you have an online platform, we had a very good sized mailing list at that point. They were very active. We had done a promotion where if you bought one book, we sent you 2 free, because we knew you'd share it. We had a big company buy a bulk order because they were going to give them out at their trade shows. And so when he did that, like, we were shocked. Like, we knew we had some good sales, but we never thought we would ever become a bestseller. And the main reason is because there was one individual who made an order out of a local bookstore, and that was one of the criteria that that the New York Times and Wall Street Journal were looking for. Was also, you had to have it in multiple channels, not just online. But because of some of the people who ordered it in those bookstores, we became a best-selling author. So it was a real shock and surprise. Unfortunately, it was during a crazy time as well, so we didn't get to celebrate it as much. But it's a great feeling to be recognized that you've done something that captures so many people's attention.
All right, sir. So, what challenges did you face while establishing your agency, and how did you overcome them?
That's a real interesting question, because back when we first started, the term conversion rate optimization didn't even exist. We actually put it together over time. When we first started, we started talking about training your digital salespeople. But back then, nobody cared about sales. Nobody thought about sales online. And so, sales was like a dirty word. Today, if you want to open up a conversion rate optimization agency, no one would think anything about it, right? They just wonder, okay, great, you're just getting started. So we had to first create awareness for that, for conversion optimization, because no one understood that, the things that we were doing make an impact on your business. And so we had to publish, I think it was at one point we had counted well over 1 million words just to get people educated on what conversion optimization was. And until people understood it, it was very hard to get clients.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this wonderful answer, sir. So, how do you keep up with the ever evolving landscape of e-commerce and digital marketing?
It's evolving every day, and so you have to be plugged into the people who are on the cutting edge. You have to be plugged into the people who are looking ahead at what's changing, or what new technologies are doing, what the bigger brands, the Metas and TikToks and Snaps are doing. And so being plugged into a great network of people who share stuff keeps me up to date, and always has me looking forward as to what might be the next wave that we need to understand is how going to impact consumers.
Okay. So, are there any common misconception about conversation optimization that you like to address?
For many years, the biggest misconception was that it was about testing the small things, like testing the color of your button or the words that are on a button. And of course, those can have some impact, but really the bigger part of conversion optimization is in understanding your customers, is understanding what motivates them, what holds them back from taking action. And I don't think enough people spend enough time talking to their customers and understanding what's holding them back. And that's probably the single biggest misconception. They also think it's a thing you do as opposed to a way of approaching business, right? It's a constant process of optimization, day in, day out. It's not a one-time project, right? It's a lifelong thing.
Great. So, can you share any dot or experience that shaped your perspective on helping business succeed online?
Yeah, there's a few of them that come into mind. One of them, we were early days. We were working with Dell and with Overstock, and with Overstock, we were able to literally overnight have them change one graphic on one page, and that graphic accounted for over $25 million. Okay. And then they never changed anything else. And then to tie that back with the lesson we learned when working with Dell is our friend Sam, after he asked us to analyze the Dell website and come up with a list of recommendations on what he should test, he asked us, okay, what do we do next? And we said, well, what do you mean? There's the whole book. You could do all of these things. And he said, well, no, that's just not the way we do things here. And he said, we work things out through, a prioritization. And as we talked with him, it helped us refocus an understanding of how to work with bigger companies, especially, and how you have to prioritize what you work on and what you test. And so what changed for us is we started taking everything we recommend and prioritizing it based on the impact it would have, what kind of resources it would need and were they available, and the time to recognize those changes and to make those changes, right, and to see the impact. And by taking those three things and multiplying them, we'd come up with a score, and that would help us prioritize how to run what test and when. And I think those two early clients really taught us a lot about what it takes to work, especially with larger companies. That's why today we prefer to work with small companies.
Wonderful, that's great. So, what's the most rewarding aspect of your work in conversation optimization?
I mean, I've gotten emails. I've had people in conferences tell me, the stuff they've learned from us has changed their lives. And there's nothing more rewarding than doing that. Of course, being able to put more money in people's pockets is great. There was a particular large company we work with that we gave them over a 10-digit optimization. And that wasn't as rewarding because it wasn't affecting any one of our friends' lives. And so to us, the most rewarding is really impacting people's lives directly.
All right. So, how do you handle skepticism or resistance from business that are new to concept of conversation optimization?
We ignore them.
Oh.
If after 25 years of seeing results and helping companies, make essentially hundreds of millions of dollars over the years, if they're skeptical, it's like saying, well, no, the sky's not blue. Okay, I'm not going to argue with them. You're muted.
Sorry. So, out of all the clients you have worked with, is there a particular success story that stand out to you?
Wow. I mean, there are many, like I said, there's the story of Overstock with the $25 million graphic. There's working with NBC Universal and working with the gentleman there who had gone through 2 redesigns prior and was frustrated because they couldn't get a lift and conversion. And, we planned the whole thing out with them, and they only executed on like 25% of what we suggested on a new redesign. And, they increased our conversion rate by over 80%. And that gave him so much of a lift that he wasn't even worried about working on all the rest of it. But the rest of it would have been game changing as well. There are just so many. I mean, I can spend hours talking about different clients. And like I said, it's a lot more fun when you can take a small guy and make a little change on their business and almost double their business. And that is really exciting. But most of those, nobody would recognize their names.
Wonderful, sir. So, how do you decide on the topic for your book? Is there a specific process or inspiration behind each one?
No, it's really about what I'm curious about at the time, or where I felt the market needed at the time. A lot of our early books, well, our first book, The Persuasive Online Copywriting, was written because we knew we just needed to get a book out. And, we had spent so much time working on copywriting that there wasn't a book at the time about online copy. And so one of our friends had just about released one, and we released it about a month later. We were both working at the same time, so we both had a great idea for that. The Rice and Beans Millionaire, because I realized there wasn't a book that helped young aspiring entrepreneurs from 12 to 82 to go ahead and understand the mindset and the principles of success of being an entrepreneur. There are a lot of great books out there like the E-Myth and Good to Great, and tons of them, but not one that in a fun, engaging way taught the lessons of what you needed to do. And so I wanted to take that based on true stories and true characters and write that book. So right now there's no book planned yet for the next one. Hopefully I'll get inspired soon for another story.
Wonderful, sir. So, what advice would you give to business that are just starting their journey in digital space?
Spend time around the community you want to serve. Understand the community, be part of that community, and then find ways to be of value and of service to that community. And from there, you will eventually grow a business if you choose to do so.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for this advice. So, sir, are there any industries or sectors that you believe are understanding the power of conversation communicating?
I mean, most industries are struggling to really do it. And again, right, it's coming back to the mindset of just every day trying to be better. Right now, my brother and I have a new startup called Data Turk, where we help owners of companies that do plumbing and electricians, and air conditioning, roofing, gardening, right? And we help them find opportunities where to improve their businesses, right? So it's not just conversion optimization on their website, but it's all about improving the daily processes in their business. And so there isn't an industry that couldn't benefit from understanding that they have these what I like to call revenue blind spots, right? There are places in their business where they're just losing money because they're not aware of it. And so if we can take their data, analyze, and tell them, hey, here's where you need to focus, then we can get them into that culture of optimization.
All right, sir. So my last question is, what the biggest lesson you have learned throughout your career in helping business succeed online?
I would say the number one sign to succeed online is just being able to act and act frequently. Too many companies, too many businesses, too many business owners, they like to do something, put it up, and they're done. And they don't realize that it is a process of optimization. Every day they've got to find a way to be better. And, I know you've been doing like your podcast for a while. Your first podcast to your podcast now, they keep getting better and better because you keep working on it. And I think that's the thing, right? It's not, oh, I did a podcast, now I should be a top podcaster. It's like, no, I need to work on this every day to get better and better, right? And I think that's probably the single best indicator I can ever find of any entrepreneur I've ever worked with is they have a propensity to take action.
That's great, amazing, wonderful, sir. Okay, sir. So thank you so much, sir, for giving me your precious and valuable time and sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience with us. I hope everybody learned something new with your talk, with your speech. Thank you so much, sir, for coming and giving me your precious time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alyan.